Welcome to the Voter Interest Project's candidate interviews for 2023. I'm Alan McPheeters, the Executive Director of the Voter Interest Project. Our mission is to provide voters with the information they need to make informed decisions about government, candidates, and ballot measures. Our focus is local. We cover Island County, its cities and towns, and various special districts, as well as the representatives from the 10th Legislative District. The 2023 elections are local and nonpartisan. We are covering 44 elective offices on this year's ballot, including mayors, city councilors, school board directors, and commissioners for hospital, port, fire, parks, and cemetery districts. 67 candidates filed for these offices during filing week in May, and we've invited all of them to do interviews for you. We also have extensive coverage of these elections and the actions of these government agencies on our website, voterinterests.com. The following interview is with Charles Merwine, one of two candidates for Director Position 1 at the Coupeville School District. We provided a list of potential questions to the candidate in advance of the interview. All right. This is Monday, July the 31st, and we're here with Chick Merwine, who's running for the Coupeville School Board, Director Position number 1. Chick, welcome to the Voter Interest Project.
Thank you.
Where are you tonight? Are you at home or?
I'm at home, yeah, in Coupeville.
In Coupeville, outstanding. Let's start out with just a little biographical information so people can get to know who you are. Are you married?
I am married. I've been married 48 years.
48 years, that's outstanding.
Yeah, I know I don't look that old, but yeah. No, I've been married 48 years. I have 2 grown children.
Mm-hmm.
Have 4 grandchildren, 2 of which have attended some school here in the Coupeville School District.
Oh, very good.
I'm originally, some people could detect this, I'm originally from Mississippi. I grew up there, graduated from the Naval Academy, and that's how I ended up out here.
Very good.
And was assigned here in 1975.
Very good.
We lived off and on here since then. I started teaching in the early 90s, taught for about 15 years, and we both, my wife and I, my wife's an elementary principal.
Okay.
And so we both moved to Coupeville in 2000. I stopped teaching in 2007, retired, but in 2010 came back part-time as doing tech support for the district.
Oh.
Which I'd done some of while I was teaching. And that was so I did that for 8 years till 2018, and then fully retired at that point. So I've been retired for the last 5 years.
Very good. Congratulations. What did you teach?
Taught math. And then as in small schools, you teach a little of everything. I taught a little biology, a little science. I taught web design, taught computer repair. And actually, even when I was doing tech support as a classified employee, I still had a teaching certificate. So I helped the other tech person. We taught a coding class to get one started at the high school.
Oh, very good. Actually, you just said something that's important, and I always comes up in talk about budgets. So let's just take a minute. Mm-hmm. You mentioned classified and having a certificate. So can you explain the difference between those kinds of employees in the school district?
Well, yes, typically classified employees in general are the teachers, but certificated employees are the teachers. They have a teaching certificate. Even your principals and your superintendent typically also have a teaching certificate, although there are administrative certificates they can get. Some of your other employees also have, that aren't classroom teachers, but your counselors and your speech therapists can also be certificated employees. They have a certificate from the state that says they're teachers, and they'll be certified in certain areas like math, science, English, elementary. Depending how old you are, you may have a K-12 certificate where you teach everything, but I think most of those people are retired by now. If you're not that, if you're otherwise employed by the district, you're a custodian, you're a secretary, you're a classroom aide, you are really hired without only the criteria that the district sets, and that's called a classified employee. And they basically have a union group, and the teachers have a union group. So classified employees have a different arrangement than teachers have, and they're more typically hourly wage employees, whereas teachers are just paid to do the job. Basically, I mean, they have hours they're supposed to be there, but they're not really paid by the hour, whereas classified employees typically are. I guess the biggest difference is teachers have more job security. Teachers cannot be let go, for instance, after May 15th. If May 15th's come around and I'm a teacher and you haven't told me you're not hiring me for next year, you're hiring me for next year.
Oh,
Whereas classified employees are not that way. I can come up and say, yeah, we need to reduce your hours. And so those are the two differences.
okay.
I mean,
Great. I think
main classification. And then there's even a third group called the non-represented, and that's like your superintendent, and typically the people who work right under him in the district office are they're just kind of outside the whole union setup.
we're going to circle back around to this when we talk
Okay.
about the budget later on, but I think that was really useful because I have no experience in school administration. Read a fair amount of stuff going on in school board, minutes and policies and things like that. And that's a distinction, but I don't recall having run across that definition. So I really appreciate you sharing that. But let's circle back to this biographical stuff. So you've been backgrounded as a teacher, you're retired now. Do you have involvement in other kinds of community organizations or political organizations within the community? Do you serve on any boards or things like that?
The one I've served on when I retired from teaching in 2007, I went on the board of the Community Foundation for Coupeville Public Schools. And after a year or two, I became the president and did that for 9 years. And then now I'm currently the treasurer of the Community Foundation. It's our local educational foundation. I actually, I did. For a period, my wife worked in Oak Harbor. I actually taught for a year in Oak Harbor. I helped set up the Oak Harbor Educational Foundation also, but we moved away quickly after that. Not because of that, but anyway, it just happened that way. So anyway, that's my main community involvement is working with that foundation, and it's also kept me connected to the schools.
Very good.
We try to work closely with the schools about what their needs are, how we can.
Can you tell me more about that? Because I've heard of the foundation, but I don't really know quite what it is they do.
Well, it was started in 1997. We basically raise money, take in donations, and then we give them out the money in 3 different ways. One is we provide classroom grants for teachers. Well, it can be any staff member, but typically as a teacher applies for a grant for something they want to do in the classroom. And we look for something that's maybe a little extra, a little ordinary, or something that would enhance it that they're not going to get money for. Otherwise, we try to encourage people to, play with house money. In other words, we'll fund this project and it may or may not work, but we'll see. And so last year we funded, we spent $30,000 on about 30 grants in the classroom. And they range from field trips to bringing in speakers to buying not audio speakers, outside speakers like on the Holocaust and equipment. Pretty much, we've been fortunate the last few years, pretty much whatever the teacher has asked for, we've been able to fund. The other thing we do is we feel it's important to have equity for students. What we call our Promise Fund. So we try to support the district so that they have like money available when students need money for special needs, whether it's coats or clothes or food, or anytime they like the middle school tries to keep some food in their office for when students have need, and we fund that. We've also funded for summer activities for students. We've actually done a few $1,000s worth of activities for students. And then the third thing we do is we provide some scholarships for graduating seniors.
Oh.
And we do some, we do about 4, but we also are sort of we do a conduit for the community. So if you're interested in setting up a scholarship, you talk to us. You just give us the money. We'll take you, and you can do whichever one. You can have us pick them. We guide you through how to set the criteria, and you can pick. And then we take care of making sure the money gets to the college. So those are our 3 main things we do.
That all sounds like really worthwhile stuff. So why do you leave that and do the school board?
It's very rewarding. Well, actually, our secretary has been the president of the school board the last year. She's Christy Sears, who's leaving. So we both have, done a little double duty, but it's not the most time-consuming thing in the world, but it certainly is quite rewarding. So
I can imagine. So what else brings you to run for the school board? I mean, your wife had been on the school board for many years.
Yeah, she'd been there about 9 years, and my wife has Parkinson's, and it got to the point where I felt she needed to quit, and she did too. But it's kind of tradition. If you're on the board and you're not going to continue, you try to find somebody to replace you. And that can be like, I can't quit if I don't know somebody's going to at least acceptable would try to be on the board, right?
Sure.
So that's what I did. I said, well, if you quit, I will make sure I'll apply, and then you'll at least know I've applied. If they want somebody else, they did. Well, about 7 people applied, and so somebody else, they did pick somebody else, which was fine. But now I also knew, just from my relationship, that the position 1 was going to go vacant this year, that Christy Sears was not running for reelection. And because I like to make sure also that there's somebody on there. Well, it was Friday afternoon. I assumed somebody was going to be running, and nobody had signed up. And, the deadline's 2.5 hours away. So I signed up to run. And I'm not saying it wasn't I'll do it if I have to. It's not that. But I just felt it was important that we have good school. I'd like to think I'd be a good school board member. I think it's important that, we have good, committed school board members. And I didn't want the position that the district have to go out the next week and try to get somebody to apply. Thought it was better if they had an application. So I did.
I have been in exactly that same position. I used to be a party chairman for in the 21st legislative district, and we had a legislative seat. There was an incumbent who was retiring. There were 4 people from the other party, but nobody from my party who'd signed up. And so late Friday afternoon, I said, well, I'll just file myself. And not with any real expectation that I was going to win, but I found no better way to learn about what that office does than to be a candidate for it. Although that doesn't sound like the position you're in. I think you probably have a pretty good idea of what school board directors do already.
I think I have been associated with schools, and I think that's something I bring I do have I think a pretty good background in how schools operate, what their limits are, what they can do. I mean, a pretty realistic outlook on that.
Sure.
And hopefully still pretty positive.
After a long time involvement.
Yeah.
Sure. So you have been, I guess we had, I told the viewers before we started up that we had sent you a list of questions. And one of the things on the list was whether you had any experience budgeting for government agencies. And I'm going to guess the answer is no, but because of your involvement with both the foundation and with your wife's involvement in the school, you probably have a pretty good idea of how this particular budget works. Is that a fair statement?
I think so. I have a sense of how the budget works. I guess I'd say no, I haven't done the budget. But what I have certainly done is live with the budget. And, I definitely have seen the consequences of budget decisions. Some you agree with, some you don't, but they have to be made. But I mean, I kind of understand what it means if you cut the building budget, or you decide that we need to RIF 2 teachers to make a budget, or or all of a sudden it's mid-year and we may not have enough money for copy paper. I mean, I get the, I understand the and I also understand the complexity, but like we mentioned the May 15th deadline for teachers. The school has to decide how many teachers they need for next year by May 15th. The legislature typically hasn't even decided how they're going to fund schools for the next year by May 15th.
Right.
I mean, you may have a hint, but it may not be solidified. So then it's like, well, how much money are we going to have to spend? Well, you don't know for sure yet. So a lot of decisions, can be very difficult. And sometimes even, for instance, what if the teacher's contract is up this summer? So now you don't even know what the pay scale is going to be next year because it hasn't been bargained yet. So, I mean, yeah, I do see a lot of the, let's put it this way. I understand a lot of the difficulties about school budgeting. I don't have any great answers for them, but there's, the way I look at it, there's several hundred school districts in the state of Washington. They all have people who are making budgets. And if there were magic bullets that make it easy or simple, or that they, that word would be out all over the place. So
I'm sure. Well, so let's talk about the budget in Coupeville. Now, we monitor 4 different school districts in the county: Stanwood, Camino, Oak Harbor, South Whidbey, and Coupeville. And you're all going through this revenue crunch that's leading to reduced education plans. Can you tell us a little bit about what you think the causes are of those revenue declines?
Well, I can tell you what I think. On the one hand, just to be sure, it doesn't matter what I think. The school districts, the charge is, well, you spend what you get, and what you get is pretty much out of your control in a lot of ways. In Coupeville, part of it is, well, I think for all the districts, during COVID, there was extra funds the school districts got, and they use these funds in various ways. But one way, for instance, is hiring extra people, and those funds are going away. So it looks like, well, the budget I had last year had those funds in. They're not going to have it this year. So though we've got to make up for that. Now, some of it is the extra people that were hired may be the people that are going to go. But a lot of times it was spent for extra parapros for the special ed department or something like that. But now that money is not going to be available, or you're going to be able to, so it's going to be, so that's one reason. Another one can be a lot of districts declining enrollment, although Coupeville has done okay in that department. I wouldn't say that's a major reason for Coupeville's lack of revenue. What has happened for Coupeville is, again, this is oversimplification, but basically the state has sort of a cost of living figure for each district. And so it funds you according to that cost of living figure. And Coupeville just got changed to where Coupeville is going to get less money than it was before. So that, I think there was over $200,000 difference right there, and from the state, and how they figure how much it costs to run a school in Coupeville.
Interesting.
It gets complicated. I think it gets bound up in how much also teachers need money to live, and because the state used to fund teachers as sort of a flow-through expense. If you had a very experienced teacher, the state would give you, which made a lot more money than a new teacher, the state would give you more money for that teacher. And then if you had a new teacher, they'd give you less money for a new teacher. As it is, the state figures out now how many teachers you need, and okay, a teacher is worth this much, and it doesn't matter whether you've got a lot of experienced teachers or a lot of inexperienced teachers. As a matter of fact, for instance, Coupeville was going to RIF or let go 2 teachers this year. They were going to have to let them go. But just before May 15th, when they were going to have to tell them that, a very experienced teacher decided to retire or move on. And so, because it was a very experienced teacher, the district saved basically 2 not inexperienced, but 2 younger teachers, because who gets RIF'd? The younger teachers, right? So the sum of those two teachers' salary wasn't too much different than what was going to have to be paid. Oh, and the district wasn't going to have, they had someone else that could take over this teacher's position without having to hire somebody from the outside. So basically those two positions were saved. So it was like a 2-for-1. The top of the pay scale for years experience and years experience and education is almost twice what the very beginning of the pay scale is.
Wow.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that's set up a little bit of a position where you have to be careful. The district used to be, it didn't matter who you hired, because if I hired an experienced teacher, I'm going to get more money from the state. If I hire an inexperienced teacher, okay, so whatever I paid, it just comes from the state. It's not that way anymore. If you hire a more experienced teacher, it's going to cost you more than if you hire an inexperienced or less experienced teacher.
Right. Interesting.
So all those things together have created, I think, that's my opinion of what's probably happened with the school district budget.
Sure. Coupeville seems to have weathered a lot of things a little better than the neighboring districts. We've seen South Whidbey's failed to pass a bond measure. Camino failed twice with their bond measure. Oak Harbor failed twice with their bond measure. Coupeville's the only one that passed 2 measures in 2022.
Yeah, that's certainly great. And I think that's just, I guess I worry a little bit that some of that's momentum in that school. The Coupeville has always had a history of passing levies and bonds pretty regularly with pretty high rates. I know Oak Harbor has not had a good history with, they had sort of a spell, but I remember when we lived here in the 80s and 90s, they never could pass a levy. So I think, although I think we're fortunate. I'm glad the community supports us, but we have to be still vigilant. There was, I think the last levy in 2022 passed with 58%, I think, which if they hadn't changed the law about, I don't know when it was, 10 years ago or so, where you didn't need 60% for a levy, you only needed that for bonds, it wouldn't have passed either.
Right.
So it went down to 50%. So it's great that we passed it, but I think we still have to say, well, you know what? We still have to make sure the community is aware of what we're doing and what we're doing. I think South Whidbey is kind of a canary in the coal mine for us, because they had a good history of passing levies, and then all of a sudden they don't.
Stanwood Camino hadn't had a measure fail since 2001. But
is that right? Yeah.
I was talking to a candidate for one of the Stanwood Camino seats, and he emphasized that he thought that there were issues with trust on part of the parents, and it might be that Coupeville hasn't had those kinds of issues come up. But do you think that there is some danger in that? You're in the community, you talking to people. Do you have a sense that the people of Coupeville still have a lot of confidence in the Coupeville School District, especially after this whole kerfuffle with the reductions in force and the Dean of Students, Tom Black, and all that? Do you think that trust is still intact in Coupeville?
Well, I think it's still intact, and I think it can be, if it has taken some hits with the kerfuffle, I think it can be, I think they can be mitigated, built back. But a part of that is just for everybody to know. As far as the Tom Black thing, I think that's a kind of a function of a small district, where it can get kind of emotional, because if you've noticed, even you said you didn't say the Dean of Students being, you said Tom Black.
Yes.
And people, I know Tom Black. I worked with Tom Black when I was a teacher. I worked with him when I was classified. My grandson spent a lot of time with Tom Black, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And so, yeah, really, really hard to see Tom go. But a lot of the people, we know Tom Black. And if you've heard some of the people make comments, let's put it this way. If hypothetically Tom, Tom's had trouble with it. If he had decided to not come back next year, right? And the school board said, well, you know what? If Tom's not going to come back, we just won't. That's a way we can save some money. We won't have the. I do not think you would have had near the hue and cry that, oh, we've just got to have the dean of students. You've got to go hire a dean of students. It wouldn't have been that because it's not Tom Black. So in a bigger district, Seattle, you had, I don't know what, 20 middle schools, and you said, we're going to get rid of the dean of students at all the middle schools. It would have been, okay, yeah, we really would like to have had them, but it wouldn't have been, we're getting rid of our guy here, like it is here. So I totally understand now, and that's part of the tough part of being on the school board is there's a big emotional attachment, to a person. And sometimes you have to, step back and look at that. I mean, I don't know what all the school board went through. I'm certainly not privy to what their discussions were and everything, but I'm sure they did the best they could. And what they came to was a conclusion that's turned out to be, not kind of emotional for a lot of people and understandably. Sometimes you have to be a little unemotional to make things work.
Sure.
So
we're getting a little low on time, but I want to touch on another topic before we go.
Sorry.
We get a lot of people concerned about what's going on with curriculum. And I haven't heard a great deal of concern about curriculum at Coupeville, but can you talk about how the school board has an influence over what pieces of curriculum are used and how you would bring in parents to have more involvement in that?
Well, the use the curriculum, the biggest input is actually when it's time to choose the curriculum, decide on a new curriculum. And there is a process for that. And it does involve parents in the community. And I've been in schools and districts where parents were involved, but it was kind of token. And I've been in others where parents were much more involved. And it has to do with just the people who are doing the curriculum adoption, the time and effort they're putting into bringing the parents. So as a school board, one thing for getting the parents involved is you kind of have to insist, look, tell me how you've involved the parents here. What are the steps you've taken to do this? Another way is, and then of course you have to monitor how they're being used and expect reports on, okay, we adopted this. And typically there's an adoption and then there's sort of the traditional, because that's how long a textbook used to last, was about 7 years. Okay. So you adopt it, you do get new math curriculum every 7 years. And at about the 3-year point, you'd want to have a sort of a how's it going with this? And is there any additions or changes that need to be made? It's changed a little bit, I think, with technology. Maybe the curriculum or curricula are less textbook bound and more, online type of driven, or less written word and more other things for good or bad. And so the other way this board gets involved is kind of relates back to the budget, because I'll tell you, one of the first things that happens is, oh, math is up for review this year, but we don't have enough money, so we're going to put that off a year. Well, that was supposed to be English next year. Yeah. So now are you going to do 2 next year? Did everybody get pushed back? So part of it is, okay, what kind of things do we need to put our money in to make things happen? So that's the other biggest way this kind of the school board influences curriculum, is how much priority, you put on, no, we really need to get this done. It's been 10 years since we looked at it, whether it's math or science or English.
We had some conversations about school performance, and I sent you some statistics about Coupeville. Basically, I think it's Coupeville's a little better than some of the others, but we've got maybe 2/3 that are proficient at grade level in English and language arts, about 1/3 to 1/4 after the 4th grade who are proficient in math. Is that a curriculum problem, or is there something else going on there?
I think it's, I wouldn't say it's a curriculum problem. Of course, now if you're talking, COVID has kind of messed us up for getting a good read on how we're doing. It's not like, oh, well, we were in school all this year, so therefore COVID doesn't have any influence. It's going to take us a few years for that influence to be overcome. So that makes it a little hard to judge at this point on something, on how we're doing. But it's everything. I mean, it's teaching, it's society and the students. I guess one thing is I really am interested in is the mental health of our students and the stress on our families. And I think what I would like to see is us the schools be able to help students be mentally healthy. Some of that's COVID. A lot of that's just from what I observe, social media. I'm so glad. I remember middle school, and I'm so glad that social media did not exist when I was in middle school. It was hard enough as it was. I don't think it would have helped me at all.
Yeah.
But I see families also under stress. And I kind of look back now, when I look back to my school, it gets a long way back, but even when I was raising my kids, the schools weren't, I mean, they cared for the families, but it wasn't like we've really got to help these families because, there's money stress, there's societal stress, there's social media stress, that raising the kids is just hard. I think schools now are just going to have to pay more attention to that and do what we can to help families, get through things. Communicating with parents. The technology has actually helped that. My observation that teachers and parents are able to communicate pretty efficiently from what I've observed. But still the family can be under stress too. So do we have resources we can help direct for them when we see issues that we can help with? Like after school programs, that's the thing we can help students for catch up for program. But you know what? A lot of families, they put the kid on the bus, they pick him up after, they don't have a way for the student to be at an after school program. So what can we do about that? Things like that.
Interesting. Okay, now we really are okay. Actually,
it's all my fault. I think.
No, it was really interesting, but I got to wrap it up. So, what is the best way for people to find out more about you and your campaign? Is there a website or Facebook page or?
No, there's not a website or a Facebook page. So your thing here is one way to learn about me. Sure. There will be the blurb in the voter's guide, but it hasn't come out for the general election yet. And the League of Women Voters has a site, but I don't think it's up for the general election.
Are they doing a candidate forum for?
Well, I'm not sure if they're doing a candidate forum. They're doing kind of answer a question survey, and then they're going to have that published. So I'm not sure if they're doing that in lieu of the candidate forum or not.
Yeah, I know they just did some candidate forums for the offices that were in the primary. But I'm not familiar with the plans for going forward. It seems to me I read, well, that's locally here. So I think the Regency Assisted Living Center was having some candidate forums as well up here.
Oh, really?
But obviously they probably would not, none of their people would be able to vote in your election, so they wouldn't be doing that. Okay.
Well, I don't know. My mother's actually in memory care Regency, so, but she has an Oak Harbor address and she's in memory care, so she doesn't vote anymore. So,
all right.
But that was interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So. All right. Very good. Well, great. We will make sure that we post links to voter's guide pamphlet statements and things like that once those are available. Okay. And then of course,
and I do have the campaign email, Merwine campaign@gmail.com. If people have questions, certainly I'd be very willing to respond to that.
Okay, good.
And I may have a website before. I'm not sure how aggressive between the two of us, our campaigns are going to be. So,
Yeah. It's hard to know on these lower on the ballot kind of districts how much.
Yeah,
campaigning
I
is
think
going.
I think it's a sign of a healthy district if you have two people running, and it doesn't make too much difference which one of them wins. And that's what I'm hoping the case we're having
Very good.
for all of our things. There have been situations, nationwide where, and even maybe closer, where there's a pretty distinct difference between the candidates,
Yes.
but I'm not sensing that that's really our situation in Coupeville. So
Coupeville tends to municipally is kind of like
yeah.
that too. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking
Okay.
this time. Really appreciate it. And we will talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You've had. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you for watching our interview with Chick Merwine, who's running for Director Position 1 down at the Coupeville School District. We invite you to subscribe to our newsletter, available in 4 editions across the county: Camino Island, North Whidbey, Central Whidbey, and South Whidbey. The newsletter arrives in your mailbox every Monday morning, with news and events from your part of Island County. Subscribe to our newsletter at voterinterests.com/subscribe. And look for more of these candidate interviews as the election season continues. Thank you and good night.